Alright guys, welcome back to Only Divergences. Thank you for joining me on this Sunday. In this video, I will be initiating coverage of Tilray, ticker symbol TLRY. This was a subscriber request, so let's take a look at the technicals to determine what we can reasonably say about this stock and its current technical structure and any potential that might exist. If you want to be a subscriber, just hit that red subscribe button and leave some kind words in the comments. Before we start, I want to preface this by saying we want to ask what preceded big moves higher for Tilray. This is a good technical analysis exercise with any stock. Just ask, in the past, what technical setups resulted in moves higher? And do we have those same setups here today? It's a good way to limit speculation and analysis and makes analysis easier because you're just looking at probabilities of patterns. And really, that's all technical analysis is. Basic pattern recognition, and then execution is applying probabilities to those patterns. So with that said, let's look back at the history of this stock. Okay, so first we can ignore this IPO move. Okay, I remember this move very clearly because this was an insane move. I remember watching it rise. I was not in it, but I remember seeing put premiums rising as the price of the stock rose, and then once it started to collapse back down, the premiums fell as well. It was just very crazy market mechanics, but there was some stuff going on behind the scenes. Obviously, it was low float, high borrow cost, gamma squeeze type of stuff. Also, because it is a post-IPO move, it's hard to put this into context, similar to Robinhood's post-IPO move, so we can basically focus more on the most recent move higher, right? This one here. And what we notice on the weekly is that we had momentum already diverging higher for a long time before the move higher, right? So you can see this was the weekly momentum low. This was when momentum hit its peak, I guess, in terms of negative momentum. And we can see price moving lower and continue to move lower. But MACD moving higher. You can see this is a clear move higher. Interestingly enough, once the MACD moved to this midline here, you can see, let's pull this out of the way, it was moving up to it. Once it got to that level, that was basically the trigger, and that's what started the explosion higher. See there? This same sort of momentum move with the MACD exploding higher after getting to this midline is something that I pointed out in the BlackBerry video, and you can watch that by going to my channel. It had the very same move. And so the takeaway that we can get from that is that a move like the one we saw earlier this year likely needs a long time to form, right? It was years of negative momentum building up and diverging higher. And that is what happened, and that is what this chart is basically telling us today. Indeed, we can see that currently on the weekly, momentum is negative. It's sloping lower, and there's no divergence at all. You're basically trying to catch a falling knife here. It's not exactly a falling knife, but it's falling sandpaper, I guess. Now, I don't want to get into the fundamentals, but you probably already know the fundamentals of Tilray and these pot companies in general. They basically need everybody and their grandma to toke up in order to be profitable. I think that the hope, the narrative, is that a legalized US market will be big enough that economies of scale will result in profitability. In any event, this chart is telling us that the market does not see that happening very soon, and with good reason. Look, if you want to make a fundamental narrative argument about Tilray and its move back here, right, because you can say, well, hold on, why did Tilray explode here? Well, remember that after Biden got elected, there was a lot of talk that it would catalyze legalization efforts, and indeed that buzz combined with the meme stock craze and really the technicals resulted in this spike. So that's all I can say on the weekly, right? But on the daily, interestingly, we can see we are now back at this gap level. I think we can see it here. This gap right here. And this essentially marked the move higher. You can see that this was when we moved above the 200-day moving average, and it was already flat. And so it had been coming down, flattened out, and now it was ready to move higher, and that's exactly what happened, and that started this big move here. Just beautiful technicals, really. Now, some technicians might say that this gap is a good entry because they think that gaps, once they get filled, they turn around or something. And look, it's possible. Anything can happen. But the weekly context that I explained shows that the probabilities are less than optimal. Okay, the daily picture here looks like a stock that is just slowly bleeding lower. We cannot really identify any high probability momentum divergence here, even though it is very likely we will get some sort of a dead cat bounce or even try to mount a new rally higher. The question really always is, will that be a move that one can trade profitably? So while it might be tempting to try to pick a bottom for Tilray, emotional control, but also capital control and confidence are important, and that sometimes means letting certain trades go. One thing I would ask you is, let's say you had $10 million in the bank. Would you be trying to catch every little trade and move in the market? You'd probably be comfortable waiting for the most opportune setup. And if you don't have 10 million in the bank, then what's the harm in starting to act and trade like you do? But I digress. So overall, the technical setup, both long-term and short-term, are not showing clear objective bullish potential, even though this downtrend is starting to wane. Now, because almost all cannabis stocks trade in line, it's likely that this assessment also applies to Canopy Growth and others. I think there could be a dead cat sometime soon, but longer term, we may need to have more shaking out before this trend can turn positive. This is not a high likely or high probability trade for me at this exact moment. So thanks for watching, and remember to like this video and watch the others that I'll release today. And if you like them and want regular updates of highly traded stocks from a pure technical analysis perspective, along with daily updates of the S&P 500, then subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow after the close.